Everything is good?
Yes.
Okay, as Maheshwar was saying, that the topic must just, well, actually, I chose to speak on is why is Prout not implemented. It was actually a question that Maheshwaran sent me an email 4 months ago. And I said, okay, yeah, I will answer it. And then I was putting it off and had other priorities. And then when I was asked to give a talk, I remember this and thought this is actually quite interesting thing. As I had some views and ideas on this, I thought it may be the perfect opportunity to try to put them in place. Now, this is not something like mathematics or even natural science or even philosophy where you have the right answers or wrong answers. I think that all of us have maybe thought about this, and I wouldn't say there is no right and wrong answer. But of course, there might be more plausible answers and less plausible answers. So I will give my personal view on this, and I hope it stimulates the thought, and which we can all consider later on. So my plan is that to go through my presentation and then maybe give some 10, 15 minutes, depends on what people have, for questions to clarify if there are things that I wrote or said that you think you want to clarify. And then after that, we open up to where everybody else can come up with their ideas and what you think about why Prout has not been implemented, and maybe apart from that also, even more importantly, what can we do from here on to try to change that trend? Now, this about everybody muting themselves normally on my talks, I say like this: if it is something you have a question that is something which has to do with deeper understanding or a different view on something or something, then write it down and keep it to the end. If there's something where I'm not clear, if don't make sense, it means you cannot follow what I'm saying, then interrupt right away, because maybe other people have also a problem. So I just clarify what I'm trying to say, but comments and the deeper questions, it's good if we wait until the end, and otherwise it disrupts the flow of the presentation. Okay, it's working. I need to move all these. All right, because they were hiding my screen.
Govinda,
yeah.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry. Some people cannot hear you very well, so if you can move a bit closer to the microphone.
I'll try. Okay, is this better now? Does it make a difference?
It does. It's clear. Everybody can hear him okay now, like this?
Is this better now? I moved closer to the microphone. Anyone who still has problems with hearing me?
Okay. So if you can say like this or like that to say if you can hear properly or not. Finger up or down. So it seems like people can hear you okay.
Okay, good. The origin of this question came from there was a Professor Christian Dupuy were giving classes in the Bolivarian University in Caracas in Venezuela, and usually she was giving talked about Prout during these classes. And during one of these classes, one student then came up with this specific question, that if Prout is such a well-designed model, why is it not established in the world? And the professor did not have an answer to it and sent it to Dada Maheshwarananda. And then later on, he shared it with me, and I would presume that he has shared it with a lot of people. But that's how the first, how the question originated and what's now become topic of this presentation. In my opinion, what I can see is that there are three reasons why Prout has not been established in the world. I would say the first is wrong timing. It has, for reasons I will explain later, it could possibly not have taken place during the time since Prout was first propounded until now. The second is our approach. I think our approach has not been optimal, because even if we could not have implemented Prout, the ideas about Prout, if we had done it in a better way, could probably have been more well known and accepted in the world, at least among alternative groups and people who are interested in a change. And the third thing is our isolationist approach, which I will also go into a little bit more detail what I mean with that. So let us start with the first topic, which is the wrong timing of what we have. Everything is, as Baba explains in Human Society, Part 2, Chapter 1, the introduction of that one discusses about the general growth and decline that is present everywhere in the world. And this is a systaltic movement, and he explains it like a person who is walking up and down a series of hills. That first you're down in the valley, you gather strength, and you go up the first hill, and then you exhaust all your strength and until it exhausted on the top of the hill, and then there is a decline down until you go to down to the bottom of the valley, and then climbing up again. In more technical terms, it starts with the retardative motionlessness, where the entity is gathering strength for growth. Then you have a manifestative motion, which is where the system or the idea or the individual becomes stronger and stronger up till it reaches a zenith, which is the manifestative motionlessness, where it cannot grow anymore, it cannot improve anymore, and then you start a decline, which is a systaltic motion that goes down to systaltic motionlessness, which means the death of the idea or the person or the situation, which is basically the same as the retardative motionlessness. It's just if you look at it from in two different ways. Now, this is universal for everything. We can see it in the human life cycle. We are born, we grow stronger until we reach our zenith, and we start to decline, and eventually we die. It's also true for civilizations that grow and become stronger, and then after a certain time, they decline. It's also have to do with ideas, religions, all kinds of phenomena. Now, when it comes to the economic cycle, Baba has also given the law of a social cycle, where he claims that these kind of different types of societies, they grow, become stronger, they reach the zenith, and they decline, and then another type of society comes up. It starts with the warrior type, where you have kings and military people, strong warriors who rule by their strength and their physical force. And when this came to its height, and it means you had like the Vikings, or you had even conqueror kings and others. But at one stage, these started to lose the vitality, and there started to be a decline. And then people who were the intellectuals, the ministers, the priests and others started to take over and started to rule behind the scenes. And there might still be a king that is in the forefront, but there is another, the intellectuals are guiding behind. Now this area also ended, and we got into the age of acquisitors, the capitalist area, which are ruling by controlling the means of production. And this has been going on since the 19th century, and it has been growing in strength since then. And the reason that we could not have seen a swift change in this is that it had simply not matured for it to start a decline. Baba said one time when he was in Europe at the Berlin Wall, he said that this wall is going to crumble, and he said that communism is going to die a premature death, but capitalism will die a mature death. It will decline. It's the normal way of all ideas and thinking. So let us start to look at the rise of capitalism, how it all started. Capitalism started to rise at about the same time with the discovery of fossil fuels. This changed the whole dynamics of society. Suddenly we had an enormous amount of energy unheard of since the start of humanity, which helped us to start factories and large-scale production and so, and made it possible for a capitalist society to be. This was not only that the markets and so became effective and strong, but for the first time, the market started to actually control society. Previously, there's always been markets, but these markets were a part of society, under the control of society. What happens in the capitalist area is that the markets took over the control of society. If anyone is really interested in the best book I can think of is Polanyi's The Great Transformation. It was actually written in the 1930s, but it's still an excellent book for anyone who's actually interested in this, and especially now, because he explains about the rise of fascism, and there are a lot of interesting parallels in what is happening in the world right now. So there's a lot of things one can get into there. Now, everything is decided by markets. We say we're living in a democracy, but democracy is run by money. If you look at the United States, for example, statistics says like that over 95% of all elections are won by the one who spends the most money. And it's the same from down from mayor up to president in all levels in between. And the ones who have the most money to spend is, of course, those are rich. And they will not want a government who's going to do something that hurts their interests. So they're going to fund things that politicians that are going to back them up. And that's how even governments and so are based, are actually following the interest of capitalism. If we look at for example, in the US, the Democratic and Republican parties, I mean, some of the most capitalist friendly moves that ever happened, like under Clinton, was done on the Democratic presidents. And I think that is also a part of the general discontent that has made populist leaders being able to rise up. Not only is it that the market controls society, even the legal system has been formulated to prop up capitalism. It means that you have made the laws such that anything that does not follow a capitalist way of thinking is illegal, and they can put you in jail and fine you and throw you in prison if you're not following the capitalist way of thinking. The final stage of capitalism has been globalization. Prior to just maybe 50 years or so, there was very much a capitalist society all over the world, but it was capitalism inside countries, and the relationship between countries were not really based on market consideration. They were more on what was perceived as the interest of these nations. But with globalization, suddenly even sovereign nations became less important and less powerful than the World Trade Organization and the treaties, the global treaties. Nobody could actually go against them. So it means we had suddenly come to a place, this zenith of capitalism, where the whole globe, the whole earth, the whole planet was one big capitalist zone. Now, this is how the capitalism has been rising up this hill to come to the top of it. And during this growth phase, it's actually impossible to stop a movement that is growing so powerfully and taking over the whole world. So to change the capitalist system has not been practically possible in the last, at least since the time where Prout was first propagated. But does that mean then that we are doomed to be stuck with capitalism forever and we're going to just grow and become stronger and stronger? No. As we've seen, all ideas, all systems, they reach the zenith and then they start to decline. And in capitalism, in this case of capitalism, it has an Achilles heel, it has a weakness that makes it impossible for it to continue to grow longer. And this is the Achilles heel that capitalism depends on exponential growth for its survival. Now, to go into this in detail and explain it is a whole lecture in itself. So I'm gonna, and many other things, we don't have time for it. So I'm going to make assertions that we can later on write me, or I can explain more in detail. But in the capitalist society economy or society cannot grow. It cannot survive if it doesn't grow. You know, if the growth stagnates, they say the GDP growth is stagnant during COVID or something, then you have a depression, and there is unemployment, companies go bankrupt, banks fail, and so. And that doesn't mean that it is not because the economy is shrinking, you could understand it. Even if it just stays the same as last year, it's a disaster because the capital system cannot handle it. It has to constantly grow. if the growth stops completely, so there's no more growth, or even worse, that is contraction, you have a complete collapse of the, and if it's consistent for a long period, anything that could survive that is not a capitalist system. Then you must change the economy so much, because a capitalist system with the financial system and the way we make money and how everything is done for a profit cannot function if there is a stop in the growth. But then maybe some economists say that, but that doesn't matter. We can grow indefinitely forever. The economy can always grow and grow, but it forgets one thing, and that is that would be beautiful if we lived in an infinite world. But the reality is that this little small inconvenient fact is that the world is actually finite, and it's governed by biophysical reality, biophysical laws. And you cannot have exponential growth forever in a finite world. Kenneth Boulding, he said once, anyone who believes that exponential growth can go on forever in the finite world is either a madman or an economist. And what is happening right now is that we are reaching the limits of growth. We are coming into the resource scarcities, also global warming and other issues, which means that capitalism has already reached its zenith. We see that there is a pullback in globalization. There are more protectionism going up. There is, we'll go into a little bit more details in the next slide. It's just that, but the good thing about this is that now if capitalism is on a decline, that it has reached as strong as it possibly could get, and it's now crumbling, this is a time where we could actually overcome and come up with a better idea to organize ourselves. And we have to do that, because otherwise we will actually, if we continue as we're doing, human society and humanity itself will probably be doomed to extinction. So, as I said, the days of capitalism is numbered. And we are coming up against the physical limits of nature. This doesn't mean that we're running out of oil tomorrow. There's still a lot of oil. It doesn't mean that any of the things that we are relying on for our society to function is suddenly just going to disappear. But it means that we are getting diminishing returns on the exploitation of nature. In the beginning of the 20th century, you could get 100 barrels of oil out of the earth by investing 1 barrel of oil. Then later on, this came down to 30, 25, 20, because we had to find it in more difficult places, like deep in deep sea drilling of oil rigs and so on. Now we are coming to things like shale oil, which is the fracking, which has become a big business in the US. And here the return is that you get maybe 3 or 4 barrels of oil for every barrel you're putting in. If you go to tar sands, like in Canada, you get, if you're lucky, 1.5 or 2 barrels of oil for every barrel of oil you're investing. If you are going to, this is a parenthesis, but if you're looking into this ethanol fuel, where we are growing maize and other things to make fuel out of it, and you mix it with gasoline, here the return is zero. You get about 1 barrel of equivalence of 1 barrel of oil by putting in a barrel of oil. So it's just a political gimmick, actually. Actually, in some cases, you even get less than 1 barrel out, but it serves the political narrative to say that they pretend that we're doing something for nature. Now, with this, the diminishing returns, it has a lot of consequences. First of all, is that there becomes more regional conflicts over control of resources. And here, Western democracies are not in such a good position. If we look at China, they have invested heavily in taking over and getting control in the whole of Africa, for example, in many other places, because they are not worried about elections in the next year or after years, because they don't have any meaningful elections. So they can take 100-year plan, and so they can take long-term strategic decisions that can help them in the long term. Therefore, China is a formidable force that is on the up, on the growth, whereas most of the Western civilization also are on the phase of decline. You see also the conflicts where China is aggressively attacking neighbors like Philippines, Vietnam, and like that, of control over the South China Sea. It's all about resources. Even if we're looking at the Ukraine war, it's political things, but it also, Ukraine is a very resource-rich country and has enormous agriculture. These are also things that we're fight over. But we will also see internal conflicts, apart from wars, and so that will grow up more, we'll have internal conflicts. We have in the capitalist societies had a policy where we have been growing inequality. The rich are getting richer, relatively richer than the normal people, and it's been going on for a long time. But because we were increasing the exploitation of nature in such an enormous extent, even though the rich were getting richer, it was still possible for the normal people also to improve their lives a little bit and get a piece, somehow a little bit bigger piece for themselves. But now when we're coming towards the limit, running into the limitations on nature, we cannot continue to, even if we can continue exploiting nature at the same rate we are doing now, a little more, we cannot continue the exponential growth in doing so. That means that then we will have to make choices. Either we continue to make the rich richer and then let everybody else's living standards decline, or we have to actually change the structure in the world so that we reduce inequality and we are managing to maintain or increase people's living standard, because the inequalities and the difference between the rich and poor are becoming less. And we also have the problem of the global warming and all these problems. They are also going to affect the whole thing. Now, the problem is that these are very complex questions, and there's none of the leaders of any party, who are all looking out for themselves, want to bring up things as they are. And that's why at the moment you see a lot of rise of populist leaders. The real constraints, the global constraints, are making it very impossible to continue and restore things like they were 10, 20 years ago, and the living standards of people. It is getting harder for everybody, everyone. And then to explain the relationship with the limitations of nature, and that we need to change to a more egalitarian society, and, for example, implement Proutist policies and make a sustainable economy. This is very difficult for anyone to understand. So if somebody comes up and say, no, all this is bullshit, this is all lies, what is really true is that, okay, and then you name it, you can put in anything. It can be the Jews or the evil Satanist pedophiles, or the Democratic Party, or the whoever it is, or the reptilians, or whatever you want to say. These are our enemies, and it is because of that they are exploiting, and their fault. That's why you're suffering. So if I come to power, I will kill them, or put them in jail, or eradicate them, or do something, and that will solve all your problems. Now, this is very simple way, very easy to convince people like that. We always like to personify evil, like the personification of evil in the devil himself, or something like that. And so this is what's happening. It happened also in Germany, for example. After the First World War, they were at the Treaty of Versailles. The conditions for Germany as the losing nation were horrible, in such a way that it was really, people were suffering a lot, and Hitler arose, and he actually ended up getting 35% of the vote before he made a coup and take over. But of course, he was also a populist leader. He blamed it all on the Jews, and the result, I think it's like 6 million Jews were eradicated. So this is a way where we're relying on a simple conspiracy. You have to find someone to blame for it. So these are also tendencies that are happening because of the situation we find. Now, all this also weakens the capitalist institutions, because the capitalist society cannot function unless you have this system of normal voting democracy, and a legal system that sanctifies or protects the private ownership and the societies like that. So with the rise of the populist leaders, we'll also see a weakening of capitalist institutions, and all this leads to that conclusions. We are seeing it already. It's not that we're waiting for it. Before, we were talking about these things are things that are going to happen. Now these are things that are happening right in front of our eyes. And therefore, I'm saying that capitalism has reached its zenith and is now in its first step of decline. And from the point of view of Prout, it is a positive things, in the sense that this is a time where people actually can see for themselves that things are going. A lot of them are maybe far down the rabbit hole, so they are believing in this, that there's some evil person who is doing all this. But for those who have others, we have a good chance of convincing people and getting to understand there is a lot of problems. There is a better way to do it. We cannot continue the way we do now, and get Prout acknowledged as an alternative to capitalism, and then as the decline of capitalism increases, even be able to set up successful Prout models and having it implemented. Okay, but even though we might not have had a realistic chance of setting up or having countries or others to accept Prout during this time, we could still have done much better in making people know about, or at least in people who are knowledgeable, are interested in these things, that they could take Prout as a solution that they can look forward to when there is possible to implement it. But in my opinion, and here others might feel differently, but in my opinion, we went about propagating Prout in the wrong way. In the really early days, Prout was presented as a God-given solution to all problems, and there was no attempt to any rational explanation. There is a problem in the country. Well, the solution is the three-tiered economy and the quadridimensional economics and decentralized planning and a cap on wealth or maximum wealth. And this is just rabbled up without any, and whatever anyone comes up with, you have like just a mantra where you're coming up with a solution. Proutists had very little understanding of other political economic systems, which you can see very clearly when they are critiquing other systems. There, it is done in a very simplistic way, so people who are actually adherents to these would probably just write off Prout right away, because what they're saying about the things they do know is just off the walls. All solutions were general, and we had not linked to specific problems in the world. Prout was a panacea, which is a medicine that cures all diseases. If you have a medicine that cures all diseases, you don't need a good doctor, because you don't need to think anything, you don't need to understand anything, because whatever problem is, you just give this one medicine that solves everything. And this was a little bit how we had went about. This was the good old days of Krita Shivananda and Tadbhavananda and others. But Proutists learned and adapted, and in the last maybe 15 years or so, I see a trend that has changed, where Proutists started to actually study economics and political systems, understanding what's the problem, and start to try to explain Prout in a logical way. It means instead of just presenting Prout as a God-given solution from authority, they came up and said that this is what's happening in the world, and this is a problem, and then we have these underlying causes, and to avoid these underlying causes, we have to change something, and then they show that the Prout policies that are presented actually could make a difference. And in that sense, in a logical, rational way, justify everything that Prout suggests, not based on dogma or on authority, but just to show that it's actually the most rational way of solving the problems everybody knows exist. Examples of this was Ramesh's growing the new economy, and others that have, and there are many who have taken much more. Bacteria in Australia also have also done good work, where you actually show that they really understand what's going on and coming up and adapting Prout to it. In this case also, instead of just a generalized problems, they actually coming up with specific issues in society and show how specific Prout's policies could resolve. But, so this is an improvement, but it was still has been an intellectual approach. And it has reached just maybe tiny percent of people. We have not reached people. And what we're talking is many times solving problems in an abstract way. And it has not resonated with normal people in their day-to-day problems. And hence we just reached a very small intellectual elite. Now, what could we do differently? Well, I would like us to first take a look at the labor movement and see what they did to just get some inspiration, because I think there are some lessons to be learned from here. In the late 19th and early 20th century, communism and trade unions and so was growing very fast. And in the matter of decades, they became a powerful force all over the world. And what was their strategy? How did they get there? They joined the working class in the struggle for better conditions. They went into the factories, the unionized workers, and they fought side by side with the workers, shared their problems, and fought side by side against the common enemy. And also the people who were leading the struggle, they were often themselves workers. So it was not like you're coming from outside and being completely stranger, which nobody would trust, but it spread from one person to another. So it became a movement to where people were working together. And you were fighting actually to solve specific real problems that are present in the community. And this was done on a very vast scale. And in this, there was also a hope. It was not more than a hope. There was a spirit of the inevitability of success. History is on our side. We cannot lose. This was based on the Marx's historical materialism, which predicted the capitalist must die and give rights to communist paradise. It's based on this dialectical materialism, where they think that everything in nature is a dialectical process. It was taken from Hegel, actually, but he did it on a mental or spiritual realm. Marx took it to practical. So he says that first it was a hunter-gatherer society, and when people started then become farmers and they settled down and plowed their land and like that, the means of production changed, and that forced a change in society, and you got like a slave society. Then when technology so improved and there were improvement in understanding, it turned into a mercantile society. And then when we had opportunities for mass production, it turned into a capitalist society. And the same way they say that it's inevitable that we will have a communist society in paradise. This then took the place of religious dogma and made people willing to risk and sacrifice for the cause, because they were sure, just like the Jehovah's Witnesses are sure that they will go to heaven after they are dead. If people were sure that we will win. History is on our side. And the third element they had was Marx's intellectual genius and this analysis of the capitalism. It was like Marx was like the prophet, and his writings was like the Bible for Christians. Now, very few people ever read the works of Marx, and out of the even me, I have met, I think in my whole life I've met 3 Marxists who actually read Marx Capital and Grundrisse, which are the fundamental. Okay, it's a bit heavy. That's like 4,000 pages of quite tedious reading, but as it's supposed to be the foundation, very few people read it. But it doesn't. It didn't really matter. It's just like how many of us understand quantum physics or the theory of relativity, and still we all accept, at least most people accept it as true, and we believe in it, and we know that's how our cell phones are working and everything. So it gave people a conviction that we are right, we know everything, and we are going to win, and the people are fighting with us in the trenches and making a change. Now, how exactly this would be applicable for us Proutists, I cannot tell you, but I think there are lessons that are well worth thinking about here, and where we have something to learn that we could think about or adapt it in some other way where we engage in people. Now, with isolationist, what do I mean? We have to face it. There will be always too few Margis to change the world. And the Margis tantric path, and only few percentage of people will ever become Margis. The discipline and the fasting 4 times or 2 times a month, and the meditation, the change in diet, and so this has always in history been a small group of people have a spiritual inclination. So if we're waiting for all people to in the world become Proutists, and you have to be become Margis, and you have to be Margi to be a Proutist, I don't think we'll see any change. To change the world, we need numbers, and we simply don't have them, and we will never get them. But on the other hand, there are many, many groups that are engaged in issues that are Proutistic. I cannot actually really offhand think of one single Proutist policy that no other group has taken up at some time and some people are fighting for. So you have actually a lot of people all over the world in different groups and different persuasions that are propagating Proutist policies, but in isolation. Albeit in isolation, but there are people who have ideas and ideals similar to Prout. And these are the moralists, which I would consider moralists. And as Baba said, moralists of the world unite. This is, Prout has a broad philosophy, and we have the potential to tie together the ideas of so many other groups who fight for specific issues and help them how their specific idea fits into a broader picture. And then we can, in that way, unify many groups and get a global Prout movement and make changes. And this is how I think we'll get the numbers to make an impact. We need to bring in more people for it. And for that, we need to interact with people. We need to be try to be part of them, join groups, and not come in and lecturing at people. Appreciate, try to learn and understand what people are doing, and see if we can join them together and into a large Prout movement. So this is what I meant about we are isolationist, in which we, to make a change in the world, we really need to tackle. Now, this is, as I said, my personal thoughts that came up when I started thinking what I've been thinking about this problem. And the important thing, they don't give us a solution of what we exactly should do, but they maybe give some guidelines and some ideas or an inspiration and food for thought, at least for the global Prout movement, or where we should direct our efforts from here on. So I will now leave stop this quite short presentation, leave now for first, maybe we can take 10 minutes or something where people can ask questions, or as long as it takes. If anyone has any questions about anything that I actually said and want to comment that, then we can do that first. And after that, we can go on, and then people can come up with their own comment and have ideas about what if you have other ideas of why Prout is not been implemented, or why and what we should do now to change that trend. As I said, there's no right or wrong answers here, but there is definitely, you could say that there are more plausible and less plausible answers. So we'll try to find those that makes more sense, and then we have to test them and see if they work. Okay, namaskar. I'll leave it to you guys to comment and ask questions.
If you have a question, please raise your hand in Zoom. So like Mark has done here. So please, Mark, go ahead.
Okay, this has been something I've been focusing on for a while. I've been involved in Ananda Marga since 1971. My focus has always been Prachar. And what's been happening that I've observed in Prout is we spend a huge amount of time talking to each other, learning the philosophy, and we're not talking to others. So my own personal initiative is, I call it to myself, Shout Prout, which means getting it out to others. One initiative I've done is to engage in Substack and try to influence the influencers. So on Robert Reich's Substack, I've become very active and become known. I've probably collected 60 what they call likes from Robert Reich about what I've brought forward. And I try to do things in a way that people ask questions. So there was 2 days ago a question, well, what is your solution? Which was what I was waiting for. And I wrote which was for Substack, a lengthy, but it was short for us, explanation of Prout and economic democracy. And I got a number of very positive, this sounds great. Mark, I'd like to go out and have a cup of, where do you live? I'd love to go out and have a cup of coffee with you and learn more about this. So sometimes we short sell ourselves as to how much people are looking for alternatives, but they don't know about our alternative unless we say it. I just participated in a conference, social justice conference in Westchester, New York, even though I live in New Mexico. I came east early to do that. And we had set up, with Vijaydhara's work and Ananta, we set up a Prout table with a huge banner behind it. We had 2 newly produced brochures. We had Dada's books there. And we had about 12 people sign up wanting to know more about Prout. In the parade that there was march through the neighborhood, our banner was number 2 in line, and it was the largest, and it was Prout. And then it said some things about it. So my feeling is, believe it or not, I'm kind of shy by nature. And it's the struggle to overcome our own shyness complex and actually talk to people about Prout. The reason Ananda Marga became so popular in this sector, it started very small, but by the retreat I attended in the winter of 1971, there were 500 people there, which grew to 600 people. And it's because we were not shy to talk to people about how wonderful Ananda Marga was. And during the time of the growth of Prout, it was the same. that we actually went out and taught. We didn't have to use the name Prout, but introduce the ideas, invite more questions, redo our websites so that they have a landing page that's not so focused on us, but focused on a new person and makes them want to explore. So it's really about that old-fashioned word prachar. You know, and originally it is Ananda Marga Pracharka Sangha, the propagation of Sangha. So that propagation is what we have to do. We don't even need to know that much about Prout to introduce others to about it. That's it.
Thank you. Do you want to comment, Govinda? You're muted.
No, it's interesting. This is, I guess, what we all, and when it comes to on a personal level, these are what we all should do. So it's a very good initiative. When it comes to a more coordinated global response, it could also be good to sit and think and strategize together. But we all have to do something in individual capacity. That's when it comes to the mounted. I think it's excellent. I think it was very interesting to hear.
I like the Sheila that says one should make an example by one's own conduct before doing the same. So I've done these as experiments. I think that the demonstrations now going on the college campuses are a phenomenal opportunity. If anything happens near where I live in New Mexico, and unfortunately universities getting out now, I intend to show up with Prout brochures and start talking to people, because there's an issue that's firing up activist youth. So I'm old, and I want to understand what's firing these people up and say, hey, I've got a solution. Occupy Wall Street died because they had no plan. It's easy to get people against something. In Montana, we call them beginners. And to say, no, yes, but here at Occupy Wall Street, Prout should have been very present, and telling people, here is the solution. Here's where we go from here, from these banks. Let's go back to credit unions, etc. Enough said.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for your comments. Maybe we can move on to Madhusudan. He raised his hand.
Namaskar. Thank you, Govinda. Very nice presentation. It's very complex. I just want to speak to one point, which is not more, but very important, which is the issue of isolationism. Margis tend to be isolated, and I think sometimes Margis used to think that, oh yes, when the Shudra revolution comes, the Sadvipers will come down out of the mountain and say, we're here to save you. And the people will look at them and say, who are you? Where have you been? No, we have to be in the society, and we have to work alongside those people who are going to make those changes in the society. And one of the best ways to do that is to get involved in politics. I've been involved in local politics for like the last 15 years. I've learned more about my community and got more contact with people and leaders in all different aspects of the community through getting involved in politics. It's really important. We keep talking about popularizing Prout, but we have to first popularize ourselves. People will know Prout through us. And if nobody knows who we are, they're not going to listen to what we have to say. So we should really think about, how do we get involved in society? You don't have to wave the Prout banner, the Prout flag. You don't have to be out there all the time promoting Prout. Just be there, and using your neo-humanistic point of view, you make an impact, and people will recognize that there's something different here. The problem is we haven't had until now any platform, Prout platform, to get involved in politics. And hopefully that will change sometime in the not so distant future. But I would really advise people to try to get involved in your local community and work alongside people who are working to make the community better, who are struggling against all forms of exploitation and the results of the defects of capitalism. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment, Govinda?
I mean, I think it's also very nice and inspiring to hear all this, and I agree with this. But getting into politics or getting into business, getting into the real world, will not be able to solve the problems of the world by staying away from it. So I'm all there also, but unless there is things that are directly concerned with my presentation or questions, these are people's ideas. It doesn't mean that what I think about them is horribly important, so this is what we all contribute. But I appreciate everything everybody has said. It's inspiring and good. But yeah, I don't think you need to ask me to comment on everything everybody says. I'm not in this case, there's no faucet in hand on what is right. But I believe anyone who's been thinking and trying to interact with the real world is doing the right thing.
Thank you. Nandini?
Hi, everyone. Namaskar. Having been on the periphery of Anandamarga for quite a while, and I'm very interested in the Prout ideas, and I look at the readings in Prout, and just on the face of it, I think seeing it as I am from a little bit outside, it feels a bit naive to think that all we have to do is tell people this is wonderful and it will work perfectly. Like I've been part of a co-housing group, and so many idealists came together in that group. And there are little problems that can like undermine the whole thing. And so for me, it seems that we don't even have to talk about Prout, just pick one thing. And for me, the thing has been, why are co-ops not more what is the barrier to making a co-op work? It seems like Baba stressed that so much in the Prout idea, and yet we don't have a lot going on. I think something down in Haiti I heard about, and probably there are things that I haven't heard about, but that's my thought, is to kind of set aside the idea that we're promoting Prout and just move forward in the world with what we think would be helpful.
Thank you. So
yeah, I actually would like to comment something because it is something that I agree with you fully. It's a little bit what I was saying, that when I was talking about the labor movement, that you get involved in concrete things that people are working on. But just this is why cooperatives are not working more. I would say that it has also to do with the phase of capitalism, because in the way that markets are set up, they are not favorable to cooperatives. They are not favorable to local economies. It is the whole structures and the laws and the dynamics of the marketplace are designed to favor the large, big corporations and the big multinational corporations and big supply chains. So when you're trying to challenge that in your own cooperative, it is not enough that you have a good interest. You're actually fighting an uphill battle. And it's sad, but I think and also many people who are getting in cooperatives, they don't know much about running a business in the first place. And it doesn't make it easier to run a business as cooperative. It makes it more difficult. So you still have to deal with all the problems that another small startup would do. Plus, you have extra challenges with the cooperatives. So it is a very important thing that we should talk about. But there are serious problems in trying to make cooperatives work, and I think we should acknowledge it and try to look at it and maybe see if there's any way we can mitigate those and make them function even within the framework of a capitalist society.
Thank you. So I'm sure we have many people that would like to comment, but let's take these three more. So we can start with Pratik, and then with Gibson, which I think is a Alok Deva, and then Jagat, and then we've finished. So Pratik, if you can go ahead.
Yeah, namaskar. So, very good discussion. I just like seeing Prout since early childhood and lot of discussions around it. I just had a few comments that, like, first, I would like to say that we should shift the perspective from third person to first person among ourselves. So instead of blaming the era, I feel that we were not ready to establish Prout and propagate Prout before. So, it's like shifting the blame from third person to the first person. And like what problems I have seen is like we as Margis probably do not disagree and commit. If we have difference of opinions, we are not ready to move along together. We don't see eye to eye. But in the corporate world, or people who are corrupt, even when their interests align, they work together, even though they may be arch enemies. So which we do not do. That is one thing. And then the other thing is that Sadvipras, in our proudest, people who I've seen, we there are intellectuals, and we go and shout out proud. But I think one aspect is lacking is the Kshatriya aspect. We are not ready to go and fight. And I think just by talking it won't be possible. Like even in Mahabharat, Krishna had to go and fight it out. So I think that is kind of lacking, because even with lot of intellectuals, I think just the society cannot change. We have to go and at some point pick up arms. I'm not saying that we physically, but some Kshatriya aspect has to be more. So yeah, those were kind of my comments. I would like to hear others' opinion on it.
Thank you. Aloka, would you like to comment?
Namaskar. Thank you, Maheshwara. I was having a conversation earlier today with Ananta. I don't know, maybe some of you know him from Maine, US. And at some point we were discussing exactly that Madhu Sudan brought, I guess. And it's very interesting how proutists amongst the world are in different places, acting inspired by Prout. And we see that in many cases, social movements are resonating with Proutist ideas. But we are missing what I will borrow this idea from Pratik, but using another way, this Kshatriya sentiment and organization on how we can converge our efforts and implement the federations as a structure, and well, at the same time strengthen ourselves and offer more clear material uplifts for society through that. It's I'm poking myself and poking everyone with that idea.
Thank you very much, Alok. Jagat Bandhu. Hello, are you there?
You hear me now?
Yeah.
I apologize for the lack of video, but this is the old man with Tracy. Another old.
It is a bit hard to understand you. Can you maybe move closer to the microphone?
Sorry. Is this better? You hear me now?
It's
How
a
about
bit
now?
it's a bit hard to understand. Can everybody or can other people understand what he's saying?
Can you hear me now? I have my microphone at maximum volume and my mouth is almost on
Okay,
top.
and now it's slightly better. It's still hard. If you can improve it somehow, it would be nice. But if not, I think you can just
All right,
go like that.
how's that? How's
Yeah.
that?
It's okay. I think it's relatively okay.
All right, I apologize.
No problem.
Maybe this is a good sign that I have nothing to say. Can you hear me now?
It's quite hard actually.
All right, this probably means I have nothing worthwhile to say. So let me just pass on to whoever else wants to speak.
Maybe you can write what you wish to share. Maybe that would work better.
I'm too lazy for that. I'll just pass to the next one.
Sorry?
Never mind.
Okay, I apologize, but it's really hard to understand what you're saying. Okay. So Govinda, you want to move ahead?
Yeah, well, it's nothing for me to move ahead. I made, as I said, this where I made a person. I don't know how long you wanted to talk, but for me it's past midnight also. So I made a presentation that opened up for questions and discussions. I think even you are earlier in the day, but.
For sure.
And all this also, I see also my face suddenly got blurred. I have no clue what had happened. I put on more light, it didn't help. So I don't know what happened. But thank you for